It's 11:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. You are standing in the kitchen, aggressively wiping down the countertops with a sponge that's already clean. There is a distinct tightness in your jaw, a quiet buzzing just behind your eyes. You're scrubbing the grout like. Actually, you're not even looking at the grout. You are staring right through it. What I think might be happening here isn't a sudden passion for domestic hygiene. It looks more like a highly sophisticated corporate audit simulation. Imagine your mind as a collapsing Fortune 500 company facing massive macroeconomic ruin. Inflation is rising, career burnout is peaking, and global instability feels like a constant, low-frequency hum in the background. The market is crashing, the board of directors is panicking, and the CEO, you, is frantically reorganizing the lobby furniture and polishing the marble floors, desperately trying to trick the shareholders into believing the company is still perfectly solvent. The frantic midnight cleaning spree, or the heavily romanticized Sunday reset, rarely has anything to do with actual dirt. It is the establishment of a psychological shell corporation. When the outside world strips away your personal agency, your brain opens a localized, highly controllable microenvironment where it can play dictator and artificially balance the books. You cannot control the housing market, but you can absolutely control the alignment of your spice rack. There is something I came across recently in environmental psychology that completely reframed how I look at messy rooms. What the evidence tends to suggest is that the human visual cortex doesn't just see clutter as passive, neutral objects. It registers every unused item as an unresolved task, which steadily compounds cortisol levels. Which might explain why walking into a room full of unopened mail, discarded Amazon boxes, and unfolded laundry doesn't just feel mildly annoying. It feels physically and biologically exhausting. Every single object in your visual field acts as outstanding emotional debt, weighing down your cognitive load until you simply cannot process another decision. Frantic cleaning, then, operates a lot like a rapid dopamine embezzlement scheme. You fold a towel, you wipe a counter, and you steal a quick, localized reduction in anxiety, tricking your nervous system into feeling a fleeting sense of total systemic solvency. You align the spines of the books on your shelf, making sure the tallest ones are on the left, running your finger along the perfectly straight edge. Why does perfectly parallel geometry make the chest feel momentarily lighter? The perfectly color-coded closet is, in many ways, a highly sophisticated white-collar emotional crime. It provides a bulletproof, socially acceptable alibi for actively ignoring the terrifying, unorganized files of real life. Productive procrastination is a brilliant disguise. You generate a hypervisible work output to prove to yourself, and to anyone watching, that you are functioning at a high level. It is infinitely easier to sanitize the refrigerator shelves, meticulously checking expiration dates on condiments, than it is to address looming financial debt, a fading relationship, or the quiet realization that you might be in the wrong career. The brain pivots to busy work because, well, it desperately hangs onto the illusion of momentum. It's hard to feel like a failure when your baseboards smell like artificial lemon and your throw pillows are perfectly symmetrical. I noticed this in my own apartment last week. I spent 45 minutes researching the optimal way to descale a coffee maker I barely even use. The machine is spotless now. The emails I was actively avoiding are still unread. We live in an economic climate that practically guarantees baseline exhaustion. Between the rising cost of living, the unpredictability of the job market, and the relentless pressure of modern hustle culture, the systemic deficits we face are very real and entirely valid. But what keeps this cycle running today is how we choose to medicate that exhaustion through avoidance. It's 2:30 p.m. on a Sunday. You are sitting on the edge of the bed surrounded by 3 black trash bags full of clothes. Your shoulders ache from hunching over. You hold up a sweater you bought 6 months ago, still bearing the tags, and toss it into the donate pile. A brief hit of satisfaction washes over you, quickly replaced by a hollow, sinking weight in your stomach. You are participating in a cycle that requires you to constantly acquire and discard, maintaining the illusion of forward motion while staying entirely financially and emotionally stationary. The cost of this behavior isn't just the time spent cleaning. It is the emotional toll of constantly running from your own shadow, pretending that throwing away a sweater will somehow fix the underlying exhaustion that made you buy it in the first place. This brings us to the astonishing volume of possessions suffocating the average American home. We often frame our relentless decluttering phases as a noble pursuit of minimalism. We tell ourselves a story about desiring a simpler, cleaner life, unburdened by material things, curating a space that reflects our highest selves. But if I had to name what is actually happening, I don't think it's minimalism at all. Retail therapy is the initial deficit, buying objects to temporarily fill an existential void, to feel a spark of autonomy when everything else feels restricted. But those objects quickly transform. They stop being rewards and become physical evidence of financial impulsivity. Relentless decluttering is not about creating space. It is the act of guilt laundering. You are throwing away the evidence of your own coping mechanisms. You are washing your psychological hands, clearing the ledger just enough so that you can inevitably consume again without the suffocating weight of the previous purchases staring back at you. We define ourselves as organized, proactive people curating our spaces, when in reality, we are just destroying the physical receipts of our own emotional spending. Recognizing this doesn't mean you should let your home fall into disrepair. A clean space is a fundamental human need, and finding comfort in order is deeply natural. But true psychological solvency comes from separating aesthetic hygiene from existential management. It requires us to stop running an emotional Ponzi scheme on ourselves. You have the capacity to pause, drop the mop, and sit in the mess long enough to ask what you are actually trying to scrub away. If you can look at a pile of unsorted mail and separate your inherent worth from its existence, you strip the clutter of its power. You stop using a bottle of bleach to outrun your own anxiety. You allow your home to be a living sanctuary rather than a cooked ledger of your mental state, finally breaking the cycle of buying to feel better and purging to feel clean. If you know someone who treats organizing their pantry like an Olympic sport whenever they are stressed, send this to them. They will know exactly what this means. It is incredibly difficult to sit still when the world outside feels entirely out of your hands. The urge to control the microenvironment will always be there, pulling at your attention, offering a cheap, temporary peace. But what happens when the house is finally spotless? The closets are empty, and the silence of the room forces you to listen to the very thoughts you were trying to drown out. The floor is clean, but the debt remains.